when we went into this, our thought was to make our home a safe haven, to give the opportunities to a child that hadn't had the opportunities, to make better choices, to parents that were intentional about having them in their home. We had no idea what the kids would need. We only knew what we knew. And so that was what we were prepared to give. It wasn't until the kids came into our home that we realized we had no idea what we didn't know. And they taught us. They taught us from the first day they came in.
One thing that shocked us is we took the kids to the park and we took roller skates with us and jump ropes and baseball. And so we were just in a little area and we were going to try to skate, and they're very frustrated. Somewhere that was inline skates, which were hard. So then I was like, okay, let's jump rope. And I found out that the oldest girl, who was 9, couldn't coordinate enough to jump a single rope, didn't know how to jump and turn at the same time. And before you know it, I had kids, they were falling out, melting down, upset when it was supposed to be a fun time. And I was like, oh my God, they've never learned to even do that. You know, like to catch a ball, throw it up and to catch it, you know, and to control it versus throwing it over your head and it's gone way over. And when you think about age-wise, the 2 oldest absolutely should have been able to cope with that. So what we did, and we came up with the idea, is to do stations. We said, I was like, this is not acceptable, and plus we have one of our original children who has some MR and some eye-hand coordination problems. So it's like, we're going to work on this. And so we did 8 stops. Mark would blow the whistle about, what, every 3 minutes, was it? They had a 3-minute
3-minute interval.
Okay. You blow the whistle to switch stations. So everybody hit each station. So one station was any kind of walk thing, like a frog hop or spider walk or kangaroo hop. So that was one station. Another station was tossing the baseball up in the air to catch it. Another one was jumping rope, a single rope. That's 3.
Hopscotch.
Another one was hopscotch. Another one was dribbling a basketball, alternating hands. Another one was kicking a soccer ball around, doing a figure 8 around 2 cones. Another one was throwing a baseball into the dog's cage. And then, was that it? There was one more. And so we would blow the whistle and they'd switch. And then we'd have 2 winners, because at first it was like just 1. And they kept being their original children, as I described the children I gave birth to. We call them our originals, or our olds, and the other ones are our news. And they kept being the winners. The 2 of them who didn't have the developmental problems kept being the winners. So we said, now we can also add a most improved. The very second week, we figured out I got to do something to give them incentive, because then they're watching her or him do it. And so it was the most improved. If the most improved or the best effort. So even if you never got the ball in there, but you kept on trying, you didn't quit, and you didn't daydream, you got an award.
And then we allowed them to vote on it. Yeah. So it was more like we taking ownership, and I see that you're doing well, so I'm going to vote for you to be the most improved. So it's like, okay.
And
so
there was usual
mom and
consensus.
dad choosing. It was like, yeah. They're like, yeah, she was the best one today.
Yeah. Calissa does have difficulty understanding different concepts that are would be age appropriate for her to understand, such as when the signal lights change on the street. She thought someone was in the small box changing the lights, changing it from yellow to green to red, which we chuckled about that, but we had to explain that to her. Then also, she would see a commercial such as Saturday Night Live coming on this Saturday, and she would ask, what day is Saturday Night Live coming on? Well, everybody would burst out into laughter, but she was serious. And so then we had to remind her of the days of the week, and it doesn't change. It's still, if they say it's happening on Saturday, it's going to happen on Saturday, or they'll name it after the date or the day that it will occur. So some simple things like that, though they may be hilarious to us, but because of her comprehension and developmental issues, she's serious, and we have to stop the laughter and address them as needed.
When Megan came, there was a lot of developmental delays that we encountered with her speech and such, and we lived up in a rural area in upper state, and we took her to Marshfield at the time, and at that point, and had a whole workup done, and that workup came through, that it was just developmental delays, and it was, we were going to work through it, and they suggested for us to come back in 6 months, so we came back in 6 months, and they said, we don't need to see you ever again. She just flew through everything. She was just, she was like a sponge, and she soaked everything up.
We knew that they both came in, that all three came in with fetal alcohol effects and or effects. But to what extent, we really had no clue. Jessica was kind of a turnaround story because she came in with all these issues, and then she went to classes and she had therapy, and we had stimulation in our house, and we played outside, and we
interacted,
and she got better. And then we thought, this is great.
This is easy.
This is a very successful story. Let's do some more of this because I love to succeed. She hit 8th grade and she didn't want to do track anymore. She started doing her homework, spending less and less time on her homework. Things that you would think would be important to her started to not be as important, like hygiene. I noticed that her face was breaking out, and we went to the doctor, and we got some medicine for that. And she wasn't taking a shower unless I reminded her, and even sometimes insisted that she take a shower. And I would talk to Richard about it and say, "What is she being lazy? Does she not care? She talks like she cares, but doesn't she care? What is she forgetting? Is she rebelling? We just went back and forth on this. So with a little more research on fetal alcohol effects and realizing that it's so many different degrees, and that when kids are little, as a mother and or a father, you do so much for them. Your expectations don't start coming until you pull back and do less, and they're supposed to do more. And that's when we started to see that she wasn't doing the things that she should be doing.
Well, we got a call, and it was a respite situation again. And Hannah has fetal alcohol syndrome and a bilateral hearing loss. She wears hearing aids and a speech impairment and severe developmental delay. And it's kind of the same kind of thing as Lindsay, except that Hannah had some real challenges behavior-wise and really tested. And Hannah had encountered a lot of disruptions previous to our placement. She'd been in 4 different placements and had both her legs broke in a previous placement, and just encountered a lot. And so besides her development, she also had some real bonding issues. She just graduated from high school in June of this year.
Right.
Richard and I were on vacation, and I got a phone call from the county telling me that there was a little girl, and she was at Children's Hospital in Milwaukee. I was getting there right before lunch. I was to give her lunch. I had a worker with me to monitor how everything went, and then she was going to come home with me. So lunch came. I went to sit her up in the bed, and the minute I touched her, she was like, I'll just show you, she grabbed onto my shirt like this and hung on to me like she was afraid that she was going to fall or I was going to do something and that's the way it was. She hung on to me like she was a little monkey.
For years.
If you can imagine that, anytime her feet were not on solid ground, she was extremely fearful. And I had to keep that at the forefront of my mind. She was fearful of stairs. She was fearful of loud noises. She was fearful if you came up behind her. Lifting her up for anything, it doesn't matter if it's 2 inches off the ground, she would scream. So everything we did on the ground for a long time, for a very long time.
And I think the other factor with Jacob, too, was that, you know, knowing that we saw more issues than that were first presented to us, we just really felt then at that point that we needed to do some outside evals. And once we got the outside evals coming in from the Wiseman, I took him up to the Wiseman Center, and we got some concrete diagnoses we could take off from there. And with Jacob, too, you know, we really felt like it was real imperative that, that he also have that bonding time, because at first there was the talk of RAD. And we just said, you know, if he does have RAD, you know, we know how we need to deal with it, and we're going to have to close down here. Because we've got everybody, everybody needs to know that there's got to be some tight bonding going on. And we took him to Wiseman, had the evals done, did not come back with RAD. But at that point, we kind of went into quarantine, I guess you could say. And when we went into quarantine, we just we changed our whole scope and
did a complete turnaround on how we did things, because a different situation here. And being out in the countryside was a blessing, because we could kind of close in as a family and regroup and figure what we had to do. And it was easier when you're in the countryside because you're kind of away from other things going on.
And he didn't have all the stimulus, because Jacob did not do well with stimulus, and we could see that right away. So we, you know, church and outside activities, shopping, you know, wherever we would go, you know, he would disrupt. And we were like, you know, those disruptions were so, there were so many in the very beginning. It was like everybody was tired from going places. So it was kind of a nice break when we said quarantine. We're staying home for a while so that he can realize that no matter what goes on, you know, his name is Jacob DeMary, and he's going to be in this family, and we are his mom and dad.
He was very scared at first that he was going to leave and not come back, and we told him, no, you're going to be part of the family.
Yep.
And the rest of our kids are patting him back, say, Jacob, this is your home now.
Yep.
Our kids were very supportive. Your kids are very important in this, because they're supportive makes a big difference.
Sexualized behaviors are going to happen. Some is just sexual play. Some's that thing people call perpetrating. And so when the children, when we decided about adopting, at first I said I wasn't going to do any sexual stuff. Because, you know, I had little girls and the boys, and our child, the one we had who has some mental retardation, you know, and just thinking about what those risks might be. But then when taking all the children, we knew about some sexualized behaviors and masturbation that was happening amongst the two girls. We knew about them. Soon after, when the boys came, we had the humping thing going on. And then we started with, you know, I wanted to make it a family versus a foster home. So I started allowing bathing like you would do with the brother and the sisters who are the same age and things like that. But then we started like having a little exhibitionism happening. You know, like, look at this, touch your privates this way, touch it this way. And we talked about it a lot about, you know, appropriate touching. First off, that honestly, once you've masturbated, you don't forget. And that God made it that it was supposed to feel good, but that it is totally what we call private. That's why we call them private parts. So prior to getting the kids, I went through that with the other children, because honestly, they were doing some of that on their own with themselves, one in particular, the youngest girl, before anybody else came into the house. So then I have children who have been sexually abused, and she's been masturbating and sexually doing it with each other, the two girls. So theirs is exaggerated and more attached to emotional reactions. So we ended up having to talk about it over and over again because people were starting to play house or play doctor at nap time. So you come in there, and we had a therapist come in working with them because the two girls were getting some work regarding sexual abuse issues already. And our therapist, who was coming doing home therapy with our daughter, I let her know that I caught the two girls, one who was our original and one who was a new, playing doctor and touching each other's privates. This person thought that we should give the other girl a consequence. My point is that this is a continuation of what was there for years. There's no reason to demonize this child for doing what we knew she was doing, but that we thought we had resolved. So we did room changes when people cross boundaries. But we always talk, I mean, two of the girls would start masturbating to the point that they would start chafing and having pain, and I had to do Desitin and warm baths and things. And the way I approached it with them, because the girls were more obvious, okay, was when we're upset and we want to calm down, sometimes you might do that. But we have to have I want to be candid, but we called it hoochie coochie. You touch a hoochie coochie and it makes you relax. I said, but even hoochie coochies need rest. So pick one of these stuffed animals or baby dolls who helps you calm down when it's time to go to bed, so that your little girl part, can have rest, because you're hurting her now. She's hurting and she's letting you know it hurts. And when I put it that way, it got better.
The going up to strangers and talking to them, it's not that she goes up and she initiates a conversation with them. She doesn't engage. With her echolalia and with the way that she is, almost everything she does is parallel. It's almost like shadowing. She doesn't engage with other children. I've got a dolly. I'll be the mommy. You be the other child or the sister or the auntie. We'll go. She doesn't do that. Everything is kind of
follow. I will follow that person.
It's her own little bubble. It's not a back and forth engaging thing. So she might go up to someone in the water park and she might start talking, but she's not necessarily talking to them. She's just sitting by them and she's talking. Very different.
And we don't know medically these things that are going on. She's delayed in school, if it's genetic, if these are things that she just was born with, or if it came from the head injuries. Don't know that we'll ever know. So you're not sure how you handle those things. We try lots of different ways.